Hi you guys, it is Delancey. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books I am hoping to read this fall season, and hopefully you can add some of these books to your TBR lists as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm actually going to start us off with Korean literary fiction, kind of an unexpected genre, but I am trying to learn more about Korean culture as I study the language. The first book on my list is going to be Black Flower. This is by Kim Yong-hun and translated by Charles LeSure. It is a historical fiction novel, and it is based off of a piece of Korean history that is often forgotten about. I had no idea about this piece of Korean history until I heard about it through Carrie Cakes over on her YouTube channel. This is the story of a small group of about 1,000 Koreans during the Japanese occupation, so in the early 1900s. They get promised that if they can travel over to Mexico and do work there, they would have land, there would be money to be had, just an all-around better livelihood. So about 1,000 of them from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, they travel over to Mexico. But when they arrive, they realize that they are actually indentured servants and there is no way for them to return back home. During this time, we do have a fictional romance element to the story. A boy, lower socioeconomic background, falls in love with the girl of a noble family, but they are separated once they arrive in Mexico, and he vows to one day find her again. Meanwhile, we also have a Mexican Revolution break out, and there is more chaos as this small group of Koreans try to find a new life in a very foreign, very different land. Very different from what they expected or were promised. I'm really excited to be entertained by this book, but to also learn a little bit along the way. Great vibes for the fall, so this is the first book on my list. Next up on the list, we have Almond. This is a popular Korean book recommended by booktubers as well as Korean celebrities. The most popular celebrities, of course, being Yoongi and RM from BTS. Both of them have read this book and really liked it. This is a story of a Korean boy named Yoonjae who is born with a rare brain condition in which he finds it hard to experience certain emotions like fear and anger. And because of this condition, he has a hard time relating to other kids. He has very few friends. He struggles in his social life, but he has a very supportive mom and grandmother, and they work with him to adapt him to society, and he's very content with his family life. But everything changes when tragedy strikes his family and Yoonjae is left alone. He goes to attend school and he starts to be bullied by another student, but again, we have another turning point when the two of them start to realize that they have more in common than they originally realized, and they strike up this surprising, unlikely friendship. And then suddenly, when his new friend's life is in danger, Yoonjae turns into this unlikely hero to save the day. Supposedly, you can learn a lot about Korean culture through this novel, so another great learning experience, perfect for the fall season, and you can have your Namjooning moment while reading this book if you are BTS ARMY. So I wanted to go ahead and add this to my TBR as well. Next up, we have The Silence of Bones by Jane Her. I have been wanting to read a book by this author for so long. I actually found her through Instagram, and all of her books are historical fiction pieces based off of a certain moment or certain aspects of Korean history. This is set in the 1800s in the Joseon period in Korea, and we are following a 16-year-old girl as she is indentured to the police bureau, and she is tasked with helping solve the case of the murder of a very well-known noblewoman. But as she dives deeper into the secrets of this dead woman, she begins to form an unlikely friendship with the head detective on the case. But things become especially twisted and complicated when this very same head inspector becomes the primary suspect for the murder, and our protagonist is left on her own to solve the case. Definitely an intriguing premise, perfect for the fall season. So if you want a little historical fiction, learn a little bit about the Joseon period, and then enjoy a really fun murder mystery, thriller, there you go, The Silence of Bones. So speaking of detectives, we are now going to move out of Korean literary fiction and more so into the mystery and thriller genre. First up on the list, we have The Leftover Woman. This is a new release coming out on October 10th. It is a family drama hung on the scaffolding of a mystery story, apparently, according to Goodreads. So a family drama sounds like a lot of fun, but the fact that there's also a mystery thriller twist to it really pulls me in as a reader. This is the story of two young mothers in New York City, one born to privilege and the other a desperate immigrant. They both find common cause when they search for a daughter taken away by China's former one-child policy. Now, I've watched a couple of documentaries on China's one-child policy. I found it very intriguing. You have that mystery thriller element that makes it very fun to cozy up with, I would assume, in a coffee shop on a cold autumn day. But you're also getting to learn something new as well. So you have that academic aspect to it as well. So it's a new release, looking forward to it. I haven't read anything yet by this author, but it's on my radar. So The Leftover Woman. Next up, we have Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. If you have been on my channel for the past few months, you know I have read a lot of books by this author. This is a Mexican noir novel set in the 1970s, and we are following two primary characters. The first one is a secretary who is wrapped up in romance novels, in comics. She is very much in the fantasy and the fictional world and very much ignores the real world around her. And then the other character is kind of like a street goon named Elvis. He is on the rock and roll scene and he is not afraid for a little bar brawl, but he seems to be quite lost. In a way, I feel like going through kind of an existential crisis, trying to find out who he really is. Two of them collide when they begin looking for a young missing woman, a young art student who is involved in student radicalism and has kind of a sketchy past of her own. From there, the two of them run into hitmen, government officials, agents, spies, you name it. This book apparently has all of the qualities and elements you could hope for in a noir novel. Perfect for the fall season. You have that mystery element to it, finding out where the missing person is, as well as diving deep into the secret lives that people keep. So now we're going to move into the fantasy genre, and no fall TBR list is really complete unless you have a story that involves vampires, reapers, ghosts, or maybe all three. And that would be this book, Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. Olivia Blake is a recently popular author. She wrote Atlas 6, which involves magicians going to school, but this book is about a real estate agent who is a vampire who needs to sell a house but is having a tough time because the house is currently haunted by a ghost who refuses to move on until he learns the truth about his passing. So then the vampire needs to hire a medium, but this medium is a total fraud, but he's also the godson of death, and the three of them then spiral into a much bigger quest than just your simple house exorcism. So I'm not really sure if this is a comedic fantasy read, if it's just quirky or clever. I'm not really sure what to expect, but the premise is enough to draw me in. This sounds like a perfect book for the fall season, great to read around Halloween, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be a very entertaining and fun time. Next up in the fantasy genre, we have Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This book came out earlier in the year, but I specifically held off because I wanted to wait until the fall season to read it. This is the second book in a series, the first book being Ninth House, and I can't give too much of a synopsis of the second book without spoiling the first book, but essentially this is the story of a girl named Alex Stern. She is gifted, or you could say cursed, with the ability to see ghosts. She comes from a very troubled childhood and past. There is substance abuse involved. And after a near-death experience, Yale University approaches her and offers her a full-ride scholarship in exchange for her working with the Ninth House. So the Ninth House is a regulatory house that oversees all of the secret societies throughout Yale. And apparently all of these secret societies use their own kind of flavor of the dark arts, of dark magic, to do their bidding. A heavier read, some darker elements and tones. It's very atmospheric. So if you really want a fall-time book that will really transport you to a very dark academia, foggy early mornings, kids walking in graveyards type of vibe, this is a great pick for you. And the second book, they are actually taking a trip to the underworld to go save another character, and this character just so happens to be one of my all-time favorite characters, so I'm very invested in what happens in book 2. Also in book 2, a bunch of faculty members are starting to get killed off, and Alex knows that this is not a coincidence and that there is once again some sort of conspiracy afoot. So Really loved Ninth House. It is definitely a great selection for the autumn season, and if you haven't read Ninth House yet, pick that one up first and then make your way over to Hellbent. And then for all of my soft girlies who just want to read something that is very low stakes, that is fun, that isn't too serious for the fall season, a manga that has really caught my eye that I want to potentially get into this season is Mr. Villain's Day Off. This is a comedic slice of life manga that takes a look at what a supervillain does on his days off, on his vacation time, and it is supposedly top-notch humor. You also have the good guys, or the police force, that is always trying to come in and thwart his vacation plans. It reminds me a little bit of like Despicable Me and the Minions, where you have a supervillain who is trying to do supervillain things, but he is actually very relatable, an approachable character, and you can't help but like him. I also heard that this series was very episodic in nature, so you can pick up the first installment and then take a break for a couple weeks or even a month before picking up the second installment. So there's no pressure to continue the story all the way through. So again, something very light and easy. The fall reading season doesn't always have to be that very heavy, serious reading material. It can be something lighthearted and fun like this as well. All right, you guys, that is gonna do it for this video, but if you do want to keep the fall vibes going, I do have a Dark Academia reading vlog that I'm gonna go ahead and link for you guys to watch next. I also have fall-themed study with me videos if you are ever looking for a virtual study or work buddy. Otherwise, have a great day and happy autumn. Bye, guys.